All right, welcome everybody. I wanted to have a quick AMA to discuss the results of the customer interviews that I conducted earlier this year. It seems so long ago now. It was just March and April. But the TLDR is I sat down with 18 developers and product managers across GitLab, which are our internal customers, to understand two things. One, how has their experience been with instrumentation at GitLab, and how can we improve to make it more efficient and more likable? And two, how can we get folks to trust our product usage data more? Because these are two things that I've heard across the business, that instrumentation is hard and people don't trust the data. So I sat down with 18 people, interviewed them. It was a lot depressing, but also encouraging that we have nowhere to go but up and a lot of things to improve, which is fun work to do. And I created a quick, I think it was about 15-minute video walkthrough of the summaries of the results. And in this AMA, I just wanted to give everybody a chance to ask any questions if you wanted more color about what I've learned or next steps. Really anything goes. So I'll go ahead and go over to the agenda. And Sam, you have the first question.
Yeah, and I just want to start off by saying thanks for taking the time to conduct all these interviews and to compile all of the insights. And I love that we're digging in and focusing in this area. It's really exciting. I felt like as I read through the deck, I felt like there's some common themes around, challenges in terms of implementation, and then moving on over to the PM side, challenges in terms of knowing where to go to access the right data as it's implemented, and then time consuming to build out reporting on those events, and then the unknown of when our data deviates, whether it's due to something changes in the product or changes in users' behavior. It's hard to see those changes or to be notified of those changes at all. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can address some of these larger insights.
Yeah, and I added some thoughts already to the agenda, but in general, I thought it was really interesting to see that the most common theme in nearly every interview was a lack of information, whether it was where to go for docs, where do I start, where do I find this data? It was just like an enablement. It wasn't even like a technical tooling challenge. That was the most common theme. So you really hit the nail on the head there. For the things that we can technically address in product intelligence, we have scheduled, or we will schedule the next 3 Think Big. We have monthly Think Big sessions now. So May, June, and July focuses on the top 3 per the RICE score. And in the agenda, I linked to the output in my issue. If you go down, there's a little caret that expands for RICE score. If you expand that, you'll see which ones are scheduled when. But I am inviting the growth team as optional to all of these. So feel free. This is really an invitation to come and brainstorm with us. How can we solve these problems? I'm purposefully not trying to pitch solutions, Sam, because I don't want to disrupt the process of the engineers thinking about these things in a number of different ways. But I will call out Carolyn's feedback. I've linked here in 1C. When she read this output, she had a very similar response about, we need to solve this problem with people finding information. And she said that the product data analysis team and the data teams are working on new models. So they're basically rehashing like everything that exists so that 1, it's as clean as it possibly can be. 2, there's great depth of knowledge of how did something go from X to Y. And 3, it should become more discoverable. The models that they're creating is meant to bring that visibility that everybody's missing. And I will just link to, I really love this DBT tool. Don't know if everybody's seen DBT tool. Now, I just landed you on the overview page, but if you dig into any single metric, you can go, I think it's like in the bottom right of the tool that shows like lineage, and you can see from where it starts to all of the different transformations until it gets to Sisense. And I think that's exactly what folks are looking for.
Sam, are you familiar with that tool? Have you used it before?
Not honestly, not extensively. Some of the issues I've run into have more been when we historically made decisions on how we interpret the lack of data or where something is coming from, and make assumptions on its default value. Let's put it that way. So there's a lot of historical stuff in the product that may or may not have a default value, and as it gets transformed all the way to Sisense, we assume a default value in some cases. And that, for me, from a growth perspective, makes it really challenging to know when can I trust a particular data source or not, because I don't know where in that lineage of transformations, if we've made the decision at some point in the history of GitLab to infer a value.
Yeah, well, that tool, theoretically, it should allow you to trace back through all the transformations. That doesn't make it easy, because some of the legacy code is complete spaghetti and like basically impossible to trace back all the way. Not impossible, just very difficult. The good news is that with the trusted data models that are being built right now, that should become a lot easier, a lot more traceable. So I would just ask you to keep an eye on this tool, and as we start to roll out those trusted data models, just try your hand at just kind of digging through some of the dependencies. It should be a lot more linear, it should be a lot easier to understand, and that might close the gap a little bit for you.
That's awesome. That's great to hear.
Miles, do you know by any chance what the rollout will be once these are available? Will there be like enablement sessions for the product team?
I don't know what the plan is there. I'm sure Carolyn has a whole scheme of how this is going to happen, but it's pretty early for her time, so I think she's not here right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. All right. I don't see any other questions on the agenda. I'll give just a minute here in case anybody has any. All right. Well, in interest of everybody's time, have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for joining. Bye, everybody.